that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 397th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the amazing Tom Fennell, him.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. You may not see his flesh, but you know it's there because you hear his voice. We're starting this show.
Hey, we're pushing 400, guys.
Yeah, we are. We're starting this show on December 3rd. Actually, before we do that, I should make an appeal for money and explain the show. We need to get funding for this show. It's not just for this show. It's for BCTV and everything that BCTV does, which is a lot. There are a lot of places. I have no idea how many shows BCTV produces that are downloaded at other stations across the country, but I know this one is, and I know that it's not.
We saw one came from England.
Huh?
We saw one. We saw comments coming from England.
We did, indeed, we did. In fact, this show was downloaded at the and put up at a site run by the what is that? Royal. I'm trying to think. It's the you know the one I mean, Tom. It's in London.
I probably do, but I can't think of it.
It's a university laboratory type place in London.
I think we're going to talk about that.
Just not getting it into my mind. Anyway, in order to get all of this done, it actually costs a lot of money to run this show, and that most of that is absorbed by BCTV. We have to come up with $480, and apparently we've come up with over 100 of that so far. I think 140 was the last count that I saw, and that was about a week ago.
Well, they used to get a subsidy from the cable TV industry, but they don't anymore.
Well, thank you, Donald Trump, for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to come up with some money, and if you go to BrattleboroTV.org, in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, there's I think an orange colored button that you can click on to make a donation. And the one thing is, if you make a donation, which would be by credit card or PayPal, and I think PayPal is preferred, make sure that you, on the screen where you fill in the amount, down below that, not very far, you'll find a place where there's special instructions, and say that it's for Energy Week so that it's credited to our show.
But it knows where to go.
It knows where to go, that's right. So it does. And the next thing is, the show is made up of news that I get at my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, which I post news to every day. I have every day since the 2nd of June, 2012, and I did it the same thing basically by email for over a year before that. Tom and I take the best stuff, the
best of the blog.
Best of the blog. Tom always says that, and we present it on this show so that people can keep up to date on what's going on. And I have to say, there's a lot of very optimistic stuff here.
A lot of good stuff here, and some of it is almost must-see stuff. I'll try to call your attention to some of the better ones because some of these are well worth visiting.
Yeah. I think it was the day before yesterday I went down to the co-op. I try to stay indoors as much as possible because of COVID-19, but I go down to the co-op once or twice a week. And there was one of the young women who worked there who said to me, George, I don't understand how you can do what you do because it's so depressing. And I said, that's the trick. It's not depressing. There is so much good news out there, and we haven't even seen the beginning of the technology discoveries and inventions that will happen during this century. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about.
Well, let's start with Thursday, December 3rd. We got a nice picture here, a graph of growth in energy storage. And it's almost, you almost don't need an explanation. Just look at the length of those lines on the extreme right.
Yeah, there are a few things to say here. That thing on the farthest right is the storage that was installed in 1 quarter, in 1 3-month period in the United States.
I thought it was a year, so it's the whole. It's only a quarter, huh?
It's only a quarter. This graph is only 7 years long, and that is almost 500 megawatts, which is just a little bit smaller than the amount of electricity that was generated by the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant. And it looks to me like that kind of level of installation is going to be repeated. And
well, storage makes a lot of sense, especially since the batteries have been getting better.
The batteries are getting better, Tom, and they're getting so much cheaper. I can actually steer you to natural gas power plants that are being torn down ahead of schedule before the end of the.
But in battery, they're doing it with Con Edison in New York.
Absolutely, that's the first one I was going to talk about. They had two natural gas power plants on the East River that are being taken down so that batteries can be put in. Why? Because batteries produce electricity so much more cheaply than these load following and peaking natural gas power plants. So anyway,
absolutely. They're going to follow the money. These companies are in business for a profit, and something that costs more money detracts from their profits. I mean, this is the way it works.
Yeah. This is an article from Quartz, and what do you have for a title for the article, Tom?
The U.S. just smashed its record for energy storage. Duh!
The scale-up of storage has been steady but slow over the last several years. But in the last 3 months, the U.S. energy storage market has absolutely boomed, according to Wood Mackenzie's latest data, giving renewables a major boost in the fight to displace fossil fuels.
Well, this is led by utility-scale systems as opposed to batteries on homes, businesses, or factories.
Right.
We're talking about the big stuff is growing the fastest.
Yes, we are, and that is an impressive, powerful tool for change.
Well, it is changing the nature of the grid, and the new grid is going to be, how would you say it, spread around. What's the word for it? Distributed.
Yeah, it's going to be distributed, but it's also going to be much more reliable, I think.
Well, we're going to be talking a little bit later about an innovative battery. And I've said this before, there's little guys working at home in their woodsheds or their garages, and they're working on stuff we can't even conceive of. And some of them are going to hit it right.
Yeah, this battery that we're reporting was something that I just found mind-boggling, but we'll get to it when we get to it.
Oh, it's brilliant.
You want to go on to the next one?
Yeah, there's an illustration here of Vineyard Wind, which doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. Well,
Major U.S. offshore wind farm put on hold. No big deal. There's more on this below.
Yeah, this is from E&E News. Vineyard Wind will temporarily withdraw its application for federal approval to erect the first large offshore wind farm in the country. The move is an apparent attempt to pause Trump administration's review of the project days before it was scheduled to publish a final analysis. This makes
days before he can screw it up.
Yeah, the Trump administration is doing everything it can to throw roadblocks in the path of progress toward renewable energy.
Well, what am I trying to say? These turbines cause cancer.
Yeah,
he's told us that.
He's told us a lot of things. They kill all the birds.
They kill all the birds, yeah, they cause cancer. Well, what's going on here? They're considering, and I think that we'll find out they have already made up their mind, replacing 9.5 megawatt Vestas turbines with 13 megawatt GE Helionx turbines. And we're going to talk about that. That is a big machine.
That's a big machine.
And they're reducing the number from 84 of them down to 62 in the same area.
Yeah, and this is significant. One of the things about those big machines is that they're built on higher masts. And if you want
they're huge. We'll talk about that. Yes, they are. They're huge in every way. We'll get to that. Let's move on.
Okay.
Last takeaway: the company is planning to begin power production in 2023. That's pretty close, folks.
And the Helionx turbines are just now getting certified to be used. So they're moving very fast on this.
They know what they're doing.
They do.
They've worked on this for a long time. They've gotten the bugs out. They're upgrading it from 12 megawatts to 13 megawatts, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
Oh man, 13 megawatts a single turbine could power Brattleboro.
We'll mention that too.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll mention that Brattleboro, but we will touch base on what they mean. Okay. Well, it's a nice picture here of wind turbines.
Yeah.
I wonder what they are, huh?
This is from CNN.
We're at a turning point on climate change, but most countries are still choosing fossil fuels over clean energy. Huh?
To limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, countries need to wind down their fossil fuel production by 6% every year between now and 2030, according to the 2020 Production Gap Report. And this means that the fossil fuels industry is going to have to be in a state of, I don't know, I'd have to call it constant depression.
Well, for one thing, they don't want to face the fact that the plants that they built are obsolete.
Some of them are, though. I mean, we just talked about those plants on the East River that were being torn down.
They're obsolete already, yeah. Well, some of the brand new plants they're building are obsolete before they can build them.
They're obsolete now before they even break the ground.
Yeah.
But
governments in the world are on course to produce too many fossil fuels.
Yes,
it's going up by 2% per year.
And they're using old.
Now, until 2030, coal will have to decline annually by 11%, oil by 4%, and 3% in gas.
Well, I read today that the number of coal miners in the United States fell by 15% in the last 10 years. In the last year,
I have read that same thing. Yep.
No,
it's unfortunate for them. They're good paying jobs, but who needs them anymore?
Well, this is something that what we have done under Donald Trump has been to try to resurrect that industry. And what should have been done is he should have been out there trying to find new jobs for those people.
Yeah, I hear you.
He didn't.
There's a nice picture here of a microburst.
Yes.
And it says, slow and steady won't win the climate race. This is from Clean Technica.
Yes. Climate-related emergencies over the last 2 years have made it clear the time for ambitious climate action in the United States and abroad is now.
Now.
The NRDC's eighth annual report. NRDC is Natural Resources Defense Coalition, I think.
I think it's Council Coalition. Same thing.
Digs into U.S. energy trends over the last 2 years to understand what it means for a worsening climate crisis. This, by the way, a microburst, which is what you're looking at here, is kind of like the reverse of a tornado. Instead of sucking things up, it has cold air just pounding down onto the ground, and the winds that produce in a situation like that can go well over 100 miles an hour. And
it's kind of a miniature hurricane, isn't it?
It kind of looks like it, but its action is the reverse of a hurricane. Hurricane winds are going up.
They're going up.
In this thing, they're going down, and
that's not a good thing.
We've been seeing climate-related disasters getting worse and worse and worse every year, and they're going to continue to get worse, even if we stop putting out carbon dioxide. But at least if we stop, they will continue to get worse slower, and eventually they'll stop getting worse.
This is what they're talking about. Deadly heat waves in Europe, massive wildfires in Australia, and in the Amazon, and in the western U.S., and the Atlantic hurricane season, which is probably the worst in about 50 years.
I think the Atlantic hurricane season this year was the worst on record ever, and it was mind-boggling. Except that we had mind-boggling hurricane seasons a couple of years ago, and so this is a little worse than that. No, this is not a little worse than that. This is way, way, way worse than anything that had come before, say, the year 2000 or so. Much, much, much worse.
A little takeaway here. The incoming administration has a unique opportunity to jumpstart a clean energy transition. And I think Biden's going to do it.
I think there's no question he's going to try, and I think he probably will. He's talked about the number of people who have to be hired for this. He's absolutely right. That number of people has to be hired.
The other thing's going to keep him from doing it is called Mitch McConnell.
Well, Mitch McConnell isn't going to live forever. You know, or I should say, not that, but that he won't be in the Senate forever. Let me put it that way. It's a better way to say it.
Well, look what he did to Obama.
Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, we wouldn't let Obama do anything.
Yes, I know. That's right, and he was very proud of that.
Yeah.
He was very
well,
proud.
Let's look at the Helionx coming up here, because we got a good view of it.
Yeah, we do. Let me put that picture up. Here we go. This is another item from Clean Technica, and a GE Helionx wind turbine. I think that is in the port of Amsterdam.
It is. Because it's running. It's been running for over a year.
Yep, as a 12-megawatt turbine. And,
yep.
You know, to give you an idea of how big this thing is, that red thing on the top of the turbine is a railing to keep people from getting too close to the edge. And I don't know, but I would guess that it's probably waist high or maybe a little bit higher.
I would. In order to be effective, it's got to be at least waist high.
It would have to be at least. And so you get an
Look
idea.
Look at the size of that, what do you call that cell? That could fit 3 regular street buses.
Yes.
That thing's huge.
It's huge.
Well, let's see what it says. The giant new GE wind turbine can power a home for a day in just 7 seconds. Huh?
The developers of the Vineyard Wind project off Massachusetts announced that they will be using GE Helionx wind turbines. The turbines recently got a capacity upgrade from a world-leading 12 megawatts to a world-leading even more 13 megawatts. Yes, what they're saying is one of those turbines could, in just 7 seconds, produces enough electricity to keep a home going for a day.
But there's 3 videos at this link. They're pretty much the same thing, but they show you turbines in action. And for one thing, it surprised me is how slow they actually move.
Well, they're
really not moving slow. They just look slow because they're so big.
Yeah, they are. I forget, but I think that the tip of the blade might be moving at 200 miles an hour. And it looks slow because it's so big. And another thing that I should mention, turbines that are put up on land, the little turbines that are close to the ground are the ones that birds have trouble with. The big ones are so high that very, very few birds actually get up that high. And certainly, you know, birds like sparrows and so forth don't.
They don't get anywhere near that. You're talking owls and eagles and stuff.
Eagles.
Well, a single spin of that turbine could power households for more than 2 days.
Yeah, there you go. And you know, it's when you have a couple of hundred of these turbines in an offshore wind farm, you may have a situation where you can't even see them from land. And if you can't see them from land, there won't be very many birds around either, and there won't be raptors because the raptors fly over land. And these things, you know, and one of the things that keeps coming to mind for me is that if it's not offshore wind turbines or onshore wind turbines, there's renewable energy to be made every place on Earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. One sort or another, or several sorts at once.
Should we go on, Tom?
Yeah, I think we should. We got another picture of a car coming up here. This is the Volkswagen Id3, which is an electric car.
Yeah, which is turning out to be a real leader, by the way. This is from Clean Technica.
Norway in November. EV market share at 80%. Fossils are disappearing.
Yeah, Norway in November almost sounds like a song, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'd be a good title for a song.
Moonlight in Vermont, or
Norway in November.
Right. Norway saw its plug-in vehicle market share stand at 80% in November of 2020, up from 60% in November of 2019. Old school non-hybrid fossil vehicles saw their share fall to just 10.5% from 27.1% a year ago. The overall,
they're always ahead of the curve, but that's what's happening.
Yep. The overall market is up 25%. So that. When I read that, I was surprised, because in most parts of the world for this year, actually, yeah, even in November, auto sales are down. But in November, people have been buying these electric cars.
Well, there's a chart of automobile registrations that's published in this article.
Yeah.
And the plug-in share consisted of 55% pure battery electric and 25% hybrids.
So more than half of them were pure battery.
Yeah. The shares of internal combustion engines at just 10% was a new record low.
Yep. Okay, we're up to Saturday, December 5th, and we have...
Yeah, what's that funny shape there?
The funny shape, the orange one?
Yeah.
A map of the state of California.
Amazing. And it says California cities banning natural gas.
Now, that's the white dots on that orange map.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way...
There's a lot of them, guys. There's a lot of them. Well, breaking news. Oakland and Seattle ban natural gas as cities continue to lead on electrification.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica. In mid-November, San Francisco's Board of Supervisors voted to ban natural gas in new buildings. So you can still get natural gas, but only if you've already got it. You cannot build a building and have a natural gas pipeline go to it. On December 2nd, Oakland City Council did the same. Now, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin announced a proposal to do the same thing there. And you can see the dots on the map showing the cities. A lot of them are in central coastal areas of California, but this is a lot of city. You know, these are.
A lot of them are clustered around San Francisco.
They're a lot clustered, but you know, Santa Monica.
Oh, they're all over the place, but particularly dense around San Francisco.
Yeah, they are. San Francisco is one. Burbank, is that right? Burbank is one. San Mateo.
Oh, yeah.
Palo Alto, Mountain View, Santa Cruz. These are names of cities that we recognize, you know.
Absolutely.
Los Gatos. What a name for a city.
The cats. It meant mountain lions.
Yeah, what's that?
It was referring to mountain lions.
And here I was hoping that it was referring to tabbies. Oh, well.
Pussycats, huh?
Yeah.
Well, 17 months ago, natural gas ban didn't even exist. And today, over 40 cities in California have banned this fossil fuel. Well, it's more than 40 now.
Yeah, it's growing fast, and it's not going to be long before the entire state does, which is impressive, especially when you consider that the state is a producer.
Well, we got a picture coming up here of a really cool car. This car is nothing to sneeze at. Very forward-looking, but very, very up-to-date.
Well, we'll read this thing and tell people, this is so mind-boggling. I thought, this was in Clean Technica, and I thought, somebody must have got this wrong. This can't be right.
Well, I'll read it, you decide. Aptera announces first never-charge electric vehicle.
Man, can you imagine? Aptera announced a solar electric vehicle that will not need to be plugged in for most regular users and has a 1,000-mile range on a full charge. Quote, our built-in solar array keeps your battery pack topped off, and anywhere you want to go, you just go, end quote, said co-founder Chris Anthony.
Well, that's a brilliant idea, and it certainly will be copied. The entire top-facing surfaces of this car are PVs.
Yeah.
The whole roof, the whole hood, it's all PVs.
But the thing is, in order to do that and have it be a big enough a part of the car's power that it'll actually keep the car going, the car has to be extremely light, and it has to be extremely aerodynamic. Now, there was a tool. I don't know, did you see the tool that was at this article where you could or maybe it wasn't at this article. At any rate, there was a tool that said that predicted the number of times per year you would have to plug your car in, depending upon where you lived and how far you drove each day.
I think so. I didn't pay much attention to it. Well, in any case, this is interesting. It's a 2-seat, 3-wheeled, high-efficiency battery electric vehicle with hub motors. It's not a small car.
No.
Overall height, width, and front-wheel tracking distance are higher and wider than a Toyota Prius.
Right.
Overall, it's about 4 inches shorter than the Prius. It's going to have a larger luggage capacity, and the entire top surface of the car is solar array.
Right. I used that tool to find out how often I would have to plug this car in if I had it here in Brattleboro. Here in Brattleboro, if I drive 25 miles a day, I shouldn't have to plug it in at all, ever.
I can believe that, but you can't have a garage. It won't work.
It won't work.
Unless you leave the lights on in the garage.
or take the roof off.
Well, top speed. This is interesting. Top speed's 110 miles an hour, and this thing will go 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds.
This is not a neighborhood vehicle. You know, neighborhood vehicles are restricted to 25 miles an hour.
No, you can get 1,000 miles out of it.
And with a full charge of there are different ways this thing will be available. It'll have 250 kilowatt hour.
Basically, it's the size of the battery that they put in it.
Right. There's 4 different sizes, and the cheapest one will take you 250 miles on a charge.
$25,000.
Yeah, and the most expensive one, which is almost $50,000, it's like $47,500, will take you 1,000 miles. So I would be able to get into a car here in Brattleboro and drive to see my son in Kenosha without having to recharge the car.
I don't even have to stop.
No, I could get to Florida and without stopping, and it's like I'd have to stop because I'd have to stop for a rest for the night. But I'm not going to do a 1,000-mile trip in one day. But there it is. And
if you want to do it, this thing will.
And by the way, did you see that I put a link to Wikipedia on this?
Yes, I did. And an article in Wikipedia about the same car.
That's right. It's been around since 2005. It lasted for a while. The developers were going to make it, I think, diesel-powered, but certainly it was going to have an internal combustion machine, and it would be powered from the rear wheel. The company went bankrupt about the time I started working on my blog, and by that time I was already pretty well aware of it, and I was disappointed that they were taking it they were going bankrupt because I could see that, if you battery powered one of these things, it would be a really amazing vehicle. Some other company, I think a Chinese company, bought the intellectual property, and then that company somehow gave it up, and the original people who started the company, Aptera to begin with, took over again and restarted it, but as an electric vehicle company.
It looks like a comfortable car. This could be the first 21st century automobile.
Yes, and there will be other pictures of it because it has come back in the news. I think I put one in today, which means we'll talk about it in the first day's news next week. And
you can bet there's going to be other ones like it.
Yeah. And speaking of vehicles, we've got another one coming up. Should we go to that?
Yeah, let's look at the tuk-tuks.
Tuk-tuks, all lined up, ready to go. This is from Clean
These things are ubiquitous in the third world. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And, they would make sense here in places like Manhattan, for delivery vehicles.
Actually, they remind me a little bit of bicycle-powered vehicles that are being used in Boston.
Well, they're based on a motorcycle. There's a motorcycle engine in there.
Yeah. Okay, what do you got for title for the article?
Tuk-tuks, all set to go.
Well, that's the picture. What's the article title?
Gaia Motorworks and Sokawatch launch East Africa's first commercial electric tuk-tuks.
B2B startup Sogawatch has partnered with Indian electric tuk-tuk manufacturer Gayam Motorworks on a first in Africa in a commercial electric tuk-tuk sector for hyper-local deliveries. And, you know, we have to think about what hyper-local deliveries mean. The service
that was just the last mile.
Well, the thing is, this last sentence explains part of this. The service offers more than just deliveries. This service cuts costs for the businesses that it's delivering.
That's an interesting part of the article.
Exactly.
They do more than just give you hardware.
It's
well,
like
B2B means business to business.
Yeah.
And it's companies that offer things to other businesses, such as wholesalers and industrial suppliers. These guys go further than that. They give them management assistance.
They give them management assistance. They give them financial advice. They give them all inventory controls and all kinds of things, all built around the idea that these tuk-tuks are going to be the things that move things from one place to another, and they're doing it electrically. So.
Well, that's the significance of the article, because they're converting all of these things now to electric. They have been internal combustion motorcycle engines, and now they're going to be electric motorcycle engines.
Right. So, should we go on?
Well, let's get a quick takeaway. Light commercial electrical vehicles is an affordable and smarter way of moving goods around and addressing that last mile challenge. And the vehicles are already being used by several e-commerce majors in India, such as Amazon, IKEA, and Walmart. So the big guys are using these things just like the little guys.
Yes, and that makes the whole thing more valuable yet. Okay, we're up to something.
Here. We're coming down. We're coming a little bit more locally, and we're looking at a Vermont solar array. Where is that? Do you know?
Where is it? I don't know. I know there was a Vermont solar array I used for a picture recently in Guilford, but this is.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that later. But this isn't it. It looks somewhat like the one on Western Avenue, but it's not.
It's interesting that there is what appears to be a garden growing in the shadow of one of these things.
It looks that way, doesn't it? Well, that's the new move. Agrivoltaics.
This particular article came from Vermont Biz.
Solar energy. This is significant. Save Vermont $17 million in 2019.
Yes, and there's more to it than that is also significant. From 2014 to 2019, small-scale solar in New England saved utilities and their customers more than $1.1 billion, that's billion with a B, in wholesale power costs. That's wholesale. That's, which means it's even more than that, retail. These savings were enjoyed not only by people with solar, but everyone with an electric bill. Everybody benefited from this.
Well, if the utilities don't have to buy power, they can afford to sell the power cheaper.
Absolutely. Vermont saved $17 billion in 2019 and $79 million. I'm sorry, I said billion, I meant million. $79 million since 2017. That's a lot of money for this little state.
There's an article that's referenced in the article itself that you might Google called Solar Savings in Vermont.
Yes. Yes.
Now, increased demand during peak periods has a deflationary effect on energy prices. That's what I just said.
Yes, it is, and this is very important. People don't realize this. If you can reduce the amount of electricity needed at the time of peak demand during a year, you have reduced the cost of electricity for the entire year because the transmission charges are based on peak demand.
Well, this from the article. Collectively, local solar in New England, all of New England now, has produced 8.6 terawatt hours of electricity, which is enough electricity to power more than 1 million households for a year.
It's enough electricity to power more than the entire state of Vermont, not just the households, but everything else too for a year.
Well, we're talking there about New England, but you're absolutely right about Vermont. It has eliminated pollution equal to half of all the carbon emissions in Vermont.
That is really important. People die because of pollution. In fact, again, there was an article today about a little girl, I think she was 9 years old, who died because of asthma in London, I think in 2013, and they finally determined that the reason why she died was because the air was polluted.
Wow.
So, and she's not alone in that. This is not things changing, pollution getting worse. What it is that the scientists are now able to say, yes, this particular person died, and a powerful contributing factor was pollution. So there.
Well, we got a picture coming up of some sprouts.
Sprouts, there they are.
And it says 3 simple steps to boost soil health and help tackle climate change.
Yes, this is from a publication I don't remember having seen before. It was from the Cranfield and Marston Vale Chronicle, which is
They're 2 towns in the central part of England, not Britain.
The British Society of Soil Science, based at Cranfield University, is promoting 3 simple steps to boost the health of the nation's soils and help fight climate change. First, remove pavers. Second, use cover crops so the soil is not bare. And third, don't use peat-based compost. And
that's interesting.
You and I have talked about peat before. And
I'll mention it because there's a sentence that it kind of explains that. What they call pavers include patio slabs and what they call crazy paving. Removing them helps the soils absorb water. Cover crops, which you would imagine, they're also called green manure, add carbon and nutrients to the soil naturally. And this is the biggie. Avoiding peat helps stop intensive mining of peat bogs, which has detrimental impacts on the climate. We talked about that last week.
Yeah, those peat bogs absorb 30 times as much carbon dioxide from the air as a forest of the same size. So that's something to really, really remember.
There's a video that comes at the link, and it's worth watching. It's called Grounded.
Yes. Yes.
Definitely worth watching. It's 4 minutes. Everybody's got 4 minutes.
Okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, we got a picture of a North Sea oil platform.
We do indeed, and we have an article from Clean Technica about things going on in Denmark.
Well, Denmark announces an end to oil and gas explorations in the North Sea. So you won't be seeing too many more of those platforms being built.
Not being built, no. A report in the Washington Post says the Danish Parliament voted to end offshore oil and gas extraction, which had started in 1972 and made the country the largest producer in the European Union. They
got a lot of oil out of that.
They sure did. The Danish government says it is now putting an end to the fossil fuel era.
So last week we talked about the Dogger Bank wind farm and how it's going to transform the fossil fuel industry in the North Sea. This is just a continuation of that.
This is, and it's impressive to me. Denmark is going the route that Danish oil and natural gas went, and a lot of people don't know about Danish oil and natural gas, which became Dong, and then now is Ørsted. It was Danish oil and natural gas. That was their business, oil and natural gas.
That was their business, absolutely. And they made a lot of money in it.
They made a lot of money, and now they are completely out of that business. They have no assets in oil and natural gas anymore.
Well, there will be no new wells drilled in Danish waters. Yes. And given the rapidly falling cost of renewables, it is likely that the existing wells will simply prove unprofitable and will be abandoned. Yes,
and hopefully abandoned in a responsible manner. Okay, we're up to December 7th, and now I see in front of us that...
This is Guilford, Vermont.
What?
This is in Guilford.
That's right. And the person who took this, who goes by the pseudonym Beyond My Ken, I've used his pictures before. In fact, I might have used this picture years ago. I don't know, but he's got them in Wikimedia Commons. And this article came from Clean Technica.
Solar jobs, solar installations, and homes powered by solar are in the top 10 U.S. solar states.
Now, this was something I found interesting. Here is a look at the number of solar jobs, solar installations, homes in the state solar homes in the state solar the number of homes in the state that solar powers, and the percentage of the state's electricity that come from solar in the top 10 states in terms of solar power per capita. 2 of these top 10 states are in New England.
Well, one of them's Vermont, the other one's Massachusetts.
Yeah, and I noticed also that New Jersey is another one, kind of in the Northeast.
Yeah, it is. It's not New England, but it's another one. It's a biggie.
I remember when I was in college, we talked a lot about solar, and a friend of mine who knew a fair amount about it. And remember, this was about 1970, so we're talking about solar power being so expensive you couldn't even power a cell phone with it because it was too expensive. He said, you know, it's obvious that one of these days it'll be working in the southwest and places like that. He said, I don't know if it's ever going to be important in New England or the other parts of the Northeast, but you know, well, he didn't know. This guy had a real handle on foresight, but he said he didn't know.
You were back in the 70s, though.
That was, and
yeah.
Things have gone way past what he thought would ever happen, obviously. So, I was kind of interested and, frankly, kind of thrilled to see that Vermont was in the top 10.
Absolutely, considering that we're a small state, second smallest, I think, in population.
Yeah.
And we're only a nose hair bigger than New Hampshire.
Which is
not too many states smaller than Vermont.
And yeah, not very many. New Hampshire's got twice the population. Okay.
Yeah, it does. Well, they got the seaport there. They got the seacoast.
They sure do. But we have Lake Champlain, which is the secret seacoast of Vermont.
The seacoast of Vermont.
That's
nice
right.
lake, though.
Okay, our next item is from the new Atlas.
And we're back on these Helionx's.
We have a picture of a Helionx turbine there, and there's one in the background too, apparently, which is more turbines that have been built. So I'm assuming that this was...
I think it's a little bit of an artist impression.
I think so, yes. Okay.
Well, it's a massive 853-foot tall wind turbines are coming to the East Coast.
Yes. The Vineyard Wind 1 project's Colossal Helionx turbines are the world's largest and most powerful. They will stand 853 feet high, which is as tall as an 85-story building, and they'll have a 722-foot rotor. Because of their size, they will capture 45% more energy than other turbines that are available.
This is called the Vineyard Wind because they're putting them up off of Martha's Vineyard.
Right, although it seems to me that you can barely see these turbines from Martha's Vineyard. They're way off.
They're way far away. They're not right up against the beach. No.
It's not going to be able to see them on every day because the atmosphere is not clear enough to allow that.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, it says that GE's Colossal Helionx turbines are the world's largest and most powerful. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that one. Each one, as we've already said, can power home for 2 days with one spin.
Yes.
And this project is going to be 800 megawatts. It's going to place these turbines 15 miles, just as off the coast of Martha's Vineyard.
Right.
And it's going to power about 400,000 houses in New England, starting in 2023.
Right. Okay, our next item is from the BBC.
But before we look at that, I just want to mention there's a short 20-minute video about the Helionx turbine, which is worth looking at.
Yeah. Okay, our next image is a picture of the Alps without snow.
And it's a skier without skis.
Yeah, I guess he is. This does not look like anything that looks like the Alps that I know.
Climate change threatens, quote, most Alps glaciers.
Up to 92% of the glaciers in the Alps could be lost by the end of the century due to climate change, say researchers from Aberystwyth University. The university's research covers the entire European Alps region and is based on 200 years of climate records and forecasts that cover the years 1901 through 2100. Obviously, there's 120 years of looking at the past and 80 years almost of looking at the future. So
the findings suggest that ski resort glaciers like Vermont would be all but gone.
Oh yeah.
Water runoff, storage, and alpine ecosystems would also be affected.
This is yeah. I remember going through the Alps on a train and seeing beautiful tiny villages, and by tiny I mean maybe 6 or 7 houses.
I've seen pictures of them. They're very picturesque.
Yeah, and the one that I've got in my mind had a stream running through it, which was going very, very fast because this was on a very steep hillside, and you know that stream was obviously vital to whatever it was that was supporting that hamlet. I think the stream will disappear, and that'll be the end of people living there.
A pretty sad takeaway here. Glaciers are the canary in the mine for climate change.
Yeah.
The retreat is so fast. By 2050, almost all the glaciers below 3,500 meters, which I guess about 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet.
10,000 feet, yeah.
All the glaciers below 3,500 meters in the Alps are likely to have melted.
Yes. And that means that if you're going to get the glacial snow, you're going to have to go to an area where a lot of people find it difficult to breathe because the air is so thin.
Well, the runoff from those glaciers is feeding most of the rivers in Europe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, December 8th, and we have a picture of a home in Cameron, Louisiana. And we've talked about Cameron, Louisiana as the target of multiple hurricanes this summer.
They've been hit several times.
Yeah, and here is a home in Cameron. My recollection is that this was after Hurricane Laura that this was taken, but that
I think you're right.
That poor house has been through the ringer. I mean, the hurricane blew the paint off the walls. So
it did. The article says that.
Yeah.
Well, much of the 2020 hurricane season can be chalked up to climate change. There's no quick fix.
Yes, this is from WRKF, which I don't remember, but I believe that is a Louisiana television station or radio station.
It's a good article. There's a good chart in there, too.
Yes. For those living on the Louisiana coast, the summer ranged from merely anxiety-inducing for some to totally devastating to others. Is this climate change? Is this the new normal? We got some answers from some top hurricane scientists.
Well, the 2020 hurricane season broke all the records.
Huh. Yeah, I guess it did. It broke records, and then it broke those records. So what can
the chart I mentioned is called How Climate Change Affects Hurricanes. It's easy to read. It's worth looking at.
And by the way, the answer to those questions, is it climate change? Yes, it is at least partly climate change. And second, is it the new normal? Yes, it is probably the new normal. So that's
warm waters, main cause.
Yep.
The jet stream.
Yep.
La Nina isn't one of the causes. It would happen anyhow. But there's more moisture. And this is interesting. Well, it's changing wind patterns. This is weird. Pollution actually decreases storms. The more pollution there is in the air, the more smoggy it is, the less sunlight reaches the ocean water to warm it up.
Yeah, but that's hardly an excuse for making pollution.
I don't think it's a good exchange.
Okay, speaking
of pollution, true, but it's not the solution.
Speaking of pollution, we have a picture of pollution.
A picture of pollution, yeah. Well, the two big clouds on the left are not actually pollution. That's water vapor. But the chimneys, that is pollution. And they're real high on the Ohio River so that the pollution doesn't go to Ohio. It comes up here to Vermont and New Hampshire.
Well, we can live with it because our air is so pure. Right?
It doesn't help.
No, it does not help. People die in Vermont from pollution. And this article, by the way, is from the CNN, but it is referring to articles in other publications.
The EPA declines to adopt stricter regulations on soot. That's not good news.
No, it's not. And this is Donald Trump's government leaving office, and they want to do whatever they can to make things as difficult as possible as they're on their way out. That's the way I interpret it.
Well, it's also about money.
Yeah, the EPA is...
They want their contributors... Their contributors gave them money, so their contributors expect money back. That's the way it works.
EPA has declined to adopt stricter regulations on particle matter pollution, going against the recommendations of its own scientists to implement tougher standards, according to reports in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
Well, for the article, the particles come from multiple sources.
Yeah.
They can enter the lungs and bloodstream, leading to asthma, heart attacks, and other illnesses, such as COVID.
Yeah.
The EPA kept existing regulations in place. They didn't reduce the limit like they were planning to. Yes. Reducing the limit could save between 9,000 and 3,500 lives a year. It appears Trump's appointees are finalizing an array of last-minute regulations ahead of Biden's inauguration. I don't think it appears. I think that's exactly what's happening.
I'm seeing this all over the news, everywhere. It's like the EPA, the DOE, everybody is trying to get in on the act of undoing any environmental benefit that we might have. And you know that we saw it last week with the land management. You know the business of opening up the Arctic. This is just going on and on and on. But you know it's something that Joe Biden is going to have to work with because that's what he's inheriting.
And McConnell's going to do everything he can to stop Biden. Yes,
that's right. And I
found
it interesting to see that Donald Trump was correct about one thing. The outcome of the election did go to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court voted 9-0 against him.
That surprised him, I'm sure.
Well,
especially since he's appointed most of them.
He appointed 3 of the 9, and
okay, not most. It's a lot.
Were conservatives, and there were a lot of people who thought, oh, that court is going to support Donald Trump, but by golly, it did not, and it rendered its decision in one sentence.
They didn't waste any time, did they?
Yeah, this is denied, and that's all they said. So he's trying another one, but what he's trying to do is to get democracy undone, so that this becomes an authoritarian state. I can say that with confidence because the Republican Party's platform was an authoritarian platform. We're going to give Donald Trump whatever he wants. I'm sorry to get so political in the course of this show on energy, but the fact is that our energy situation in the United States has been really screwed up because of...
because of him, that's for sure.
Politics. Well, because of him and Mitch McConnell and a few others.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get away from that and look at something.
There's a picture of a Nissan Leaf being charged.
There is indeed.
Funny place to put a gas hose, isn't it?
Yeah, and except it's not a gas pump.
Electric cars could save California's power grid.
Clean Technica is the source of this. California is doubling down on EVs. Critics say more plug-in cars will strain the grid, but here is why they're wrong. EVs can charge up when the demand is low, making use of surplus wind and solar power that might otherwise go unused, and they can unplug when demand peaks. And this business of plugging in or unplugging can be controlled by computers. So you could plug in an EV for an overnight charge, and if the demand suddenly goes up in the middle of the night, the car stops charging.
Yep.
But if this actually evens out the question of demand versus supply. We've got to move on, Tom. We don't have a lot of time.
Well, we're coming up. The next article is about Wednesday, so let's move right to it.
Let's do that. And we have another article from Clean Technica and a picture of a QuantumScape battery. That thing that person is holding is a battery. And this is
well, that's a part of a battery.
This is what I was referring to when I said this was absolutely mind-blowing to me. What do you got for a title?
QuantumScape releases performance data on its solid-state battery technology. And solid-state batteries boggles my mind. I mean, I think of batteries having electrolyte. And that thing you're seeing there is a strip of metal, and it's replacing the electrolyte.
Yeah. For almost a decade, QuantumScape, based in San Jose, California, has been working to perfect solid-state lithium battery, replacing the electrolyte with a thin strip of metal. Now, QuantumScape has released performance data for its lithium metal battery. And, you know, it's like you say, people are doing this.
Ordinary lithium cells use a liquid electrolyte, which can explode under certain circumstances. They have done so. Replacing the electrolyte makes the battery smaller, and here's the key word, safer.
Okay, I want to get on to the next article because we've got two more and we've got about a minute.
Two to go, so let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, this is from
There's a picture of what they call a skateboard there, and we'll talk about that in the article. Zero Labs reveals a universal EV platform. That's the skateboard for classic car conversions. This is a pretty clever article.
It is, and when they say classic here, they're talking about conventional. They're not talking about Model T Fords here. They're talking about...
No, they're talking about like 60s cars.
Yeah. After more than 5 years in extensive R&D, Zero Labs has unveiled its most disruptive product yet. It's a fully realized electric vehicle platform called Skateboard to turn a classic car, truck, or SUV into a thoroughly modern, thoroughly electric vehicle. We've seen this from VW and a couple of other places already, but this is an organization which is supporting a wide variety of vehicles.
Well, this skateboard is, for all intents and purposes, a complete vehicle.
Yeah,
fully self-contained, electric motors front and rear, batteries integrated into the frame, and a fully independent double wishbone suspension at each corner.
Okay.
Okay, and what you do is you just put a body on top of that of that skateboard.
Take the body of the car you've got, complete with a cigarette butts in the ashtray, and stick them on that.
600 horsepower. Huh? 500% greater than the classic original 1966 Bronco.
Okay, and our last item is from Renews, and we have a picture of an offshore wind farm.
Is that what that is?
I think it is.
This is interesting because they're talking about the Irish West Coast, which right now has no wind power at all, as far as I know.
Yeah, well, look at the amount that you can get from it.
A lot. The Irish West Coast can become a 70-gigawatt offshore hub. Remember, what am I going to say now about gigawatts?
A gigawatt is a bigawatt, and here we
gigawatt is a bigawatt.
Yeah, you got more of them than you can fit children in a schoolroom. Okay, up to 70 gigawatts of offshore wind could be generated in the west coast of Ireland to make the country a net exporter of power and provide a huge boost to the local supply chain, according to a study. It says the Atlantic Sea has massive untapped potential, mainly for floating wind power.
Well, just put it into perspective. The country of Ireland has only 3 gigawatts presently installed.
Yeah.
Of course, that's not supplying all of their electricity. They're buying some from England.
And this, by the way, is the part of Ireland that suffered the worst from the potato famine.
The West Coast, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, we're up at the end, I think.
The report identifies world-class wind resources with the potential to create 15,000 manufacturing jobs, including the production of green hydrogen, and a farther 10,000 in the supply chain. So they have a hell of a potential here.
They do, and this is not a big country that we're talking about. Okay, we're up to the end of the show, Tom, and we have
I think we've hit the last article.
Yep, we have a slide here that says, have a simply glorious week.
Please do.
So we invite you all back for our next show, and that's what we want you to do in the meantime. Have a simply glorious week. Bye, Tom.
Adios.